Blue Collar Millionaires, we've got Ivo Pereira with us today. You're going to like his story. He's going to tell you how to get pay dirt, because that's exactly what he works in, is the dirt. He starts at the ground up portion of the real estate world. So all of you real estate professionals, you'll appreciate his story as well. But he's got a pretty great story, because not only did he start his company and he's been very successful in it, he has also acquired another company so that he can grow and vertically integrate. One thing I do know about Ivo and his wife, Taylor, is they work very hard and they are very focused, and they put a lot of money into their education, and they surround themselves with very bright people that's already done what they're trying to do. So Ivo, man, me and Kevin are super happy to have you. Little background real quick is me and Kevin both know Ivo from Tim Brott's mastermind group. And Ivo is one of those guys that he doesn't meet a stranger. And when you walk away from him, you feel like a best friend. So super great quality to have as an individual. So thanks for coming on, Ivo. And we appreciate the time you set aside for our audience. Tell us where you started and kind of where you're at the moment, and then we'll start to fill in the gap.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey, well, first and foremost, I want to appreciate, Chris and Kevin. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure. Thank you for the kind words. Hopefully, I can give a little bit of value and give some good perspective to some of your audience and some of the guys that are listening, guys and girls that are listening. So honored to be here. Appreciate it. So giving you guys a little bit of background, where I came from and how we got here today. Originally moved over from Brazil at the age of 8, did high school, went into a trade school as a mechanic, did that career for about 8 years or so, turning wrenches, made good money, got hurt, and had the opportunity of being able to move dirt, which was something my dad did. And I got asked to do it, knew nothing about it. And I took that opportunity. One of my neighbors was an inspector and say, hey, we have this job. Your dad has a dump truck. Do you want to do this job? And how that really got started was I went to the meeting. I knew nothing about it. Got home, Googled what you do with dirt. And I figured literally it said, you take it to the landfill, or sometimes homeowners want it, or sometimes farmers want it. And that's how everything kind of started. I did some snow removal on the side while I was a mechanic to just create some extra revenue. So flipped cars. So I was always just chasing something, even though I was already making a 6-figure revenue that paid me very well as a mechanic, but I never found full fulfillment out of doing that. So when I became overwhelmingly complicated of trying to have a full-time job, fix cars, answer calls, run a business, invoice, all that, I decided it was time to do my own thing. So I started a trucking company with a division of snow, started doing some snow removal, did that. Trucking, we grew, first year in business, while I was still a mechanic, we did like 100,000. When I went full on my own, we did 800,000. And my goal was I just want to hit 1 million. So I brokered majority of my work, which means, I owned no dump trucks. I just got people, put the deals together, and did that. And so went from 800,000, we hit 1.8, 3 million at year 3. Then from 3 million, we went to 7 million, 8, 9, 15. Last year, we did 20 million and 20.5. And so every year it's been a growth. I've been blessed to be able to continue to expand and grow the company. But to just digress, we went from being, doing snow removal, trucking. From trucking, I started having the ability. My customers were asking me, well, you have a truck. Do you have the machine to do this? And that digressed into me doing some excavation work. Again, I knew nothing about it. I just, by stupidity, I always said yes. And that kind of forced into learning, partnering up. A huge part of what I did is I took people that knew what they were doing, but didn't have the communication or the knowledge or the leverage to be able to negotiate the deals, or that were too afraid of the deals. And I, again, by either sheer force or stupidity, I would do those deals that they were afraid of, and it would work well together. So I subbed out and partnered a lot. That allowed me to get into the site development side of things. And I always ask the question, who is signing my check? So, when I started in the snow removal, it was a trucking company. So then I wanted to be the trucking company. When I was a trucking company, it was a site developer. So I was like, well, if he's signing my check, maybe I got more margin if I'm the site developer. So then, I looked at doing some of the excavation work. And now, as I'm the site developer, is who's signing my check? It's really the real estate developers, right? And that's the realm that I wanting to head towards. So, did that, started doing small excavation work. And then I met up with Scott Hannes, during 2018 is when I went to a small group with Tim, where he's like, what's your one problem that he can solve? And I said, look, I'm disorganized. I can go get the work. I can go execute, but I need help creating structure. He said, you got to go meet Scott. Brought Scott on to my company, changed my business night over day, completely put structure, help me forecast, help me look at, I was just always like, I want to make more money, but I had no plan. It was just a lot of energy and sometimes going the wrong way. And sometimes I think us as business owners, we think we're like, you get to the end of the day, like, man, I worked really hard, but you look back and you're like, I didn't get shit done today.
Yep.
And so, you're like, yeah, I was busy, but you're just busy with dumb shit. So Scott came in, helped me create structure, helped me ask the right questions, and helped me plan my vision of, okay, what is it that you're trying to do? What is your goal? So 2018, I was doing 8 million. We set out to do a plan of 100 million in 5 years. And how am I going to do that? Right? Like, he's like, that's an aggressive plan and it's doable, but how are you going to actually obtain that 100 million? So we wrote out a plan that if we're going to do it in 5 years, I would need to buy some companies. Trying to do that organically was going to be a lot of effort, a lot of, customer acquisition costs. So he said, Ivo, if you're going to do that in that span, you probably need to look at some acquisitions, which I knew nothing about. I didn't even think, when you think about people buying companies, you're like, oh man, you bought a company. Like, this dude is big time. But just putting out a plan. So we put that out that we were going to start buying companies. And all I did is I did a Facebook Live that talked about what my plan was and that we're looking to buy companies. One of my customers that I did the trucking for said, hey, whenever you're ready, I'm ready to rock and roll. We talked about it, took about a year, ended up buying that company in last year in March. It's actually a year this month that we've acquired them. We were able to acquire that company. Company had no structure, had a good name, been doing it for 10 years, but no systems, no processes, did good work, had the people. And we were able to take that company, grow them about 30% in 9 months. And now we're going to almost triple them in size in a year. And now we have the backlog, we have the people. We were virtually able to buy that deal with no money out of pocket, which we'll jump into. And it's allowed me to get to my goal and buy into time, right? I think that's a lot of some of the stuff we're looking into is like, how do we us as entrepreneurs, we want to do it tomorrow. Yeah. But some of the beauties of being able to buy businesses is it allows you to shorten the gap, right? It allows you to, instead of blood, sweat, tears, grind, and getting the proof of concept, buy into the proof of concept, either raise the money, find the money, put the deal together, put the structure, help it grow. So that's what we've been able to do. We're now a full-blown site development company where we do excavation, we lay utilities, we do all the horizontal work. So when you look at a piece of raw property, we'll clear the trees, we'll do the excavation, we'll put the pipe in the ground, then the builder goes vertical. They do the concrete, they go up, and they do all of that. So that's where we're at today, where we have 2 divisions. We still do the trucking for other people, but we still do our own site development. And that's allowed us to grow tremendously in that aspect. There's been some downfalls of certain things, but overall, it's been a crazy ride. I'm super blessed to have been able to do that. And a lot of the reasons I've been able to do that is by surrounding myself with guys like, Kevin, Chris, these different events that we do to allow you to think bigger and think different of what's even possible. Because I think half of the stuff we listen, you don't think that you're even worthy or you can do it. So that's a packed a lot of
incredible. I see the growth. I mean, this is incredible. Yeah, you can get there, and I think that is the best way to get there is acquisitions. Can you Can you talk about how you found that deal and then how you got it kind of with almost no money or no money out and how you structured it?
Yeah, and I don't mind. We'll talk numbers. So if you guys want to ask questions on numbers, I always share
That's
numbers to
awesome.
give perspective, right? I think sometimes people talk and they talk in the gray, and it doesn't really help. So we'll talk numbers so people can understand. So how did I find the deal? And how are the deals out there? Honestly, we did this event with Scott where he came in and you write out your 1 year, 3, 5, 10, right? And you reverse engineer. If you want to do 100 million, well, what are the activities and things you got to do? So we did that, and we found that we have to buy businesses. And so after we did that full exercise, I'm a big proponent of sharing, oversharing, communicating to the world. What you put out to the world will give back to you. So after that event, I literally went on, did a Facebook Live. I shared my screen where it pretty much had my business plan. And even Scott was like, "You're crazy. Your competitors are going to look at that." And it has I said, "Man, if my business just look at that and it helps them, it's out there." Right. So I shared how I was going to get to 100 million and what I was willing to do. And so on the live, I said, "Look, if you know anybody that's stressed out, that's been doing their business, and you have a conversation with them and they're like, oh yeah, I'm waiting for the days, or they're looking to get out, or they're home late all the time and they don't see their family and they feel like," or if you're a business owner and you're just, you got into that point where you're ready to just kind of hand it off into a new direction and you want to see your people being taken care of, I'd love to be able to have the conversation. And I just did a Facebook Live and was just like, put it out there. And then I got a text message that night from one of my customers that said, "Hey, kind of jokingly, hey, whenever you're ready to take over the keys, they're right here for you." And I was like, "Well, what are the keys consist of?" Right. And we kind of kept that jokingly thing kind of for a couple months until we really got serious. I went out to an event that he was at and he pulled me aside and said, "Hey man, are you really looking to buy companies?" Like, he's like, "Can you even buy companies? Like, do you have the money?" And my answer to him is like, necessarily, I have the money. And if I don't, we'll go get it. But yeah, I'm looking to buy companies. We're looking to scale. And he said, well, let's really have the conversation, because we're looking at retiring and kind of dwindling this thing down. That conversation then led me to asking my bank, what does that even look like? How do I do it? Having some conversations with some guys in the group talking to Scott. Scott worked at a private equity firm that was $1 billion, and that's all he did was mergers and acquisitions. So we started that process where they listed their price. We did a non-disclosure. We did forgot what's the name of it, where you got to keep it private or whatever.
NDA.
NDA. Yeah, we did an NDA, and we kind of started the process. The deal went from being 5 million to 2.5 is what I ended up buying the deal for. They had done, their best year was 6.8 million in revenue. And this is some of the tricky part that small business owners don't get. Nobody wants to pay taxes, right? We're all trying to figure a way how not to pay taxes, how not to show revenue. And there's so many small businesses out there that do make revenue, but they expense everything so they don't show taxes. And, it's good for the 10, 20 years you're in business, but when you go to exit, it crushes you in your multiplier of what the company is worth, right? So there's so many companies that we could buy pennies on the dollar today, because you have these business owners that are just so focused on saving taxes, but not focusing on their exit, that when they get to an exit, they don't realize, but they will, that, wow, I'm really not worth all that much, but the business has the potential for you to turn them like I did night to day. So 2.5 million was what we ended up buying it for. It was a strict asset purchase, which meant there was no strings attached with any legals. I didn't buy the entity. I didn't buy any of their stresses, worries. It was just the equipment, the people, and the remaining work, which pretty much was just the equipment, right? The equipment came in and appraised at 3.1 million. So I knew that I was safe from the get, right? They just wanted one seamless position. They didn't have a lot of backlog, which was a learning lesson for me. So they had about $500,000 worth of backlog, which is still, good.
Explain what backlog is.
So backlog is what you have, the work you have, to complete. So let's say you still have 3 or 4 jobs to do that have, let's say you have 5 jobs that have $10,000 remaining to do. You're going to have $50,000 worth of backlog. That's kind of promised work that you're going to do. It's signed, executed contracts. That's yours. You have to do that. right? So when you talk in the construction world, when you want to build up a backlog, is you're trying to build up enough work for you to execute that year, because our contracts are long. It's not a service base where you just go and you do this job and you go and you do that job. You know, you're bidding a job, you're estimating it, you're getting it awarded, and then you got to go execute. And these jobs on our end take anywhere from 8 months to 2 years to do. So you project out how much work you have left to do. That's your backlog.
Wow.
If I explain that.
Yeah. So it seems like with that backlog, if he didn't do a good job bidding, you're also stuck working for less than what you typically would.
Yeah.
Correct. And so buying this company so they had about 33 employees, 60 something pieces of equipment, and their payroll, if it was not done correctly, and we did and learned, but the $500,000 worth of backlog for 40 employees roughly is not a lot. I mean, you're going to eat through that work. So they were going to either sell to me or they were going to shut it all down. So they stopped taking on any more work. They did not want anything else to do. And if they didn't sell to me, they were going to sell their equipment piece by piece by piece. Yep. They were going to start laying off people by people, which we know is today in today's market. You know, I look at people worth more than anything else. I mean, a great employee is worth any equipment, any technology, any job. I think that was their biggest asset. And I literally paid $0 for 33 employees. So we did that, acquired them, and then we started the stabilization of trying to pick up work, integrate. But it was a strict asset sale. How do we do with no money? So I go to my bank, we look at the different options, and there's, you could do SBA. You could have done just a traditional business sale where the bank looks at, what is this company generating in revenue? What is their EBITDA? What's their multiplier? What is the market? So EBITDA is interest before taxes, earnings, distribute. What else am I missing in there? Depreciation, and I
think you got it all.
Amortization. So it's the number. It's the clear number before all of those things get added back, right? So there's the market value of what market pays for, tech companies. We know that's where you hear all those crazy multipliers where, they did, they're losing money, but they're still worth X, Y. So the tech is out of the ordinary, but on average, from what I've been told, and Scott, a company blue collar working right now is getting anywhere between 4 to 7. Now our trade services are getting higher as our economy, you see people getting crushed in tech. These big private equity are looking for safer routes to put their money. So you're seeing blue collar companies getting a higher EBITDA multiplier than you've seen before, because it's a service-based business. They need it, right? You're going to need it through a recession. So you're seeing companies being worth a lot more than they were used to. You've seen HVAC companies be bought at 15 times what their EBITDA is, right? Which is they're kind of their bottom line. So there was multiple ways. So when we ran the numbers with the bank, this company, and this is what you run with a lot of small companies that want to pay nothing in taxes and show no revenue, they couldn't justify what they made to in an actual conventional business purchase, because they weren't technically making any money. But after you did all the add backs, right? Well, after you saw, well, the owner spent $100,000 on this and all those stuff that's going to go away once you buy them, it just didn't make sense to buy them in that kind of function. So that's where the discount comes from, where we looked at it and said, okay, well, let's just buy it as an asset. Let's just look at what their equipment's worth, what it is, what they have, and what is that alone. Because the bank then looks at it, okay, you're pretty much just buying equipment. There's no liability for me. I'm not going to have to be worried that you're going to have to be sued by an employee that they dealt with wrongly 3 years ago and all that. So the bank said, Ivo, this probably makes more sense as an asset purchase than it is an actual business purchase. And that's what allowed me. So on an asset, you think about it, you go to your bank and they say, hey, you're buying a piece of equipment. It could be a truck. 9 times out of 10, they fully fund it. If you're going to go buy a truck, and they'll fully fund it for you. Now at this size of scale, at 2.5, the bank wanted me to have a little bit of skin in the game. Right. So they were able to fund 90% of the deal, which, if you think about it, I mean, they
Massive.
literally funded 90% of the deal, and it was work. And we knew, I mean, and I fought with my bank. I said, look, come on, man, here's the appraisal. It appraised higher than what than you're lending me. You're in the upside by 600 grand. You should be able to lend it 100%. You have zero risk, and it's all tangible, equipment. None of it was out of goodwill. So, a lot of these businesses that you buy too, when you look at buying the business, you're paying for the name, the brand. That's goodwill, right? But I had some of that's not tangible, so the bank can't collect that. If he was trying to, so I did it that way because it's tangible, it's easy to lend for the bank. It was a win-win for the owner because I also didn't have to scrutinize every single aspect of their accounting, their, how do they handle any employees? Because a lot of this too with these smaller businesses, they just want out, and it's exhausting to them to go through this process. So like anything else, you have to solve a problem, right? Like sometimes if you overcomplicate it to them, they're like, I just don't want to do all this. I want to sell my equipment and be done. I don't want you to ask me about my whole life story and what I did and didn't do. Yeah. So yeah, some of that, and we did that. The bank financed 90%, and how I was able to pay for it, zero money out of pocket, is we had a line of credit that we used for business purposes. So, I just drew out of my line of credit to pay for the 10%. And so the fact of it is my line of credit at the time was 3.5%, right? So I drew on a line of credit, put the down payment. They financed 90% at 4.5%, which my bank now, he looks at, because I give him shit because he's lending me at 8% now, or 6.5. And I'm like, dude, he's like, dude, you got your largest loan with me is at 4.5. So, we were able to do it that way because I was structured in the beginning, knowing where I was going. Scott helping me put the vision. If I didn't have a line of credit, then I would have just had to come up with, the 250 grand. Which again, one thing that I learned through the process too, I could have had that 10% be the holdback. So anytime, you always have a security you want to have, right? You do a holdback with the owners to make sure that, everything they promised you is true. The equipment's good. The contracts are good. So hindsight, I only did 75,000 of a holdback. So I really only had to get a loan from the bank for 125. So for the down payment, but hindsight now, my next deal is the down payment, whatever that is going to be my holdback.
Yes.
I'll just tell them that's the holdback. And then the bank will finance the 90%. And maybe now with the economy, it might be 80 or 85. Or just get the owners. I could have gotten the owners to do owner financed on the down payment, right? Which is very small, significant amount for them. So that's how I was able to get the deal, literally zero money out of pocket. And it values night and day, changed my valuation of our company with hard assets. And it's very little risk for the bank. It was very little risk for us as far as what I was buying. And the best thing of it all, for tax purposes, this was an asset purchase. So 100% of what I bought went for asset distribution, not goodwill. So now my taxable liability, if I had a massive gain last year, I could have written off that whole 2.5 million. Yes. And now I get that whole depreciation. And now we're taking that and we're projecting what years we're going to be better. And we're taking the depreciation at chunks, which now has just limited my taxable liability. So just in the taxable liability aspect for it, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So it's it's an awesome story to tell.
It is. It's an awesome deal.
Was this a S or C corp or an LLC?
So they were an LLC.
Okay. Yeah. So did you keep the name?
So yeah, some details on that. So even though I didn't buy the company, they weren't going to do anything with it. And they had some branding recognition in the market. So what we did is I bought the assets, but I also bought the rights to the name. So I still technically, when people looked at it, I still had the rights to have their stickers, to advertise as them. I just bought the brand rights. And then once the deal was closed, they had to create a new, they had to go do business as something else. They had to create a new entity, which gave me the whole rights to their name. So we did that. And then, we were able to do it in that aspect. And give me your question again to make sure I answered it correctly.
No, you just answered it, because there's a stock sale and there's an asset sale when you get into the S&C corporation, and then an LLC, you don't have to worry about that. So when you say asset sale, you're literally meaning you just bought assets. You didn't put any money towards the free cash flow, the goodwill.
Nope, I didn't. And they got to keep. So that's another thing. You know, when you're looking at buying people's receipts, so if you're buying the whole company, you're buying their receivables, you're buying their payables, you're buying everything that comes along with it. Doing an asset sale is so clean, because I was going to pay $5 million because they had $1.5 million in receivables. They had some other stuff going on that was going to come in, but I mean, it takes months to go through their receivables and see what's actually real and what's actually collectible. And there's risk there, because maybe somebody doesn't want to pay you. So I was going to get a loan out for $1.5 million on money that I didn't know was going to come in or not. And I have a line of credit that was $1.5 million. So if I needed it, which we did, to pull, that's why we didn't do that. And one thing with the asset sale too, which is a tricky if you're merging companies, is, you know, the employees. So the employees, how you do that is, if you did a merge, like you said, a stock sale, you know, just all merges, it's pretty seamless. Everything kind of keeps going as it was. But with an asset sale, what we had to do is they were terminated one day with their previous employee, and they were hired on with me the following day. So that was just a tricky thing that we had to maneuver and learn through the process of doing an asset sale with 30-something employees, because, you know, you're talking about insurance gap, 401k, making sure everybody's covered. So there was a little bit more moving parts, but overall it was a lot cleaner, just as far as liability wise. You know, because if I would have taken their whole stock purchase, if somebody came back from 5 years ago and sued because they did some sort of harassment, it was going to be on me. So I like the idea of doing an asset sale on that aspect of it.
What did it look like when you took over the company? Did you lose key players? Did you keep everybody?
Was there redundancy?
Yeah. So a little bit about that. One of the learning lessons that, again, and I'm sorry, I keep mentioning Scott because I didn't know any of this. I mean, and that's one thing I'll say, like, if you guys, anybody that's going to look at buying companies, you have to get, I mean, I'm glad you guys have like Kevin and Chris in your corner that can help guide you guys, but get somebody that knows what they're doing. There's a lot of moving parts that, you know, I knew nothing of. So, you know, one thing we did for the key personnel that stayed with us, we did a retention bonus, right? So, you know, we did a 2-year, you know, we set an X amount of dollars, and you stay with us 2 years, you'll get paid this every year to stay with us, to incentivize them to stay, to incentivize them to go through the growing pains, through the merger, help us get everything lined up. So that was one good thing that we learned from Scott: do a retention bonus for your key personnel. And hindsight, I could have done that differently. I should have gotten the owners to pay for that. I paid for that out of pocket. Next deal. Most of the times that's something you can incorporate in, because, you know, you're going to ask the owners, well, how do I know your employees are going to stay? And one of the things they can sell you on is, well, we're going to make sure we give them a retention to stay along with your company. So I paid that for out of pocket. The next deal I do, I'm going to put that on the owners to convince me that they're key. Because that's, you know, like we said, the people are the main focus, right? So we did that. And then what we also did to lose, we didn't lose any employees. After the merger, I did a full meeting. You know, it was all hush hush until the deal was pretty much done. And then I did a meeting, just I already knew a lot of these guys because I worked alongside them for years. So I had personal one-on-one conversations just as when I was a customer to them. So they knew me. But, you know, I reiterated that what was the purpose, what was the goal, what was going to be better for them. But I also set the expectation what was going to be harder. Because, you know, I said, I'm not going to be unrealistic and tell you that nothing's going to change, because I don't want you guys in a couple months to just be pissed off that, oh, they were full of shit or whatever. So we set the right expectation. We gave them what was to come. And then out of the 33 employees, we did not lose anybody. And then 2 months later, we had an employee that, you know, we rated everybody what their skill set. And we had like a C-level employee ask for a substantial raise. And we knew that it wasn't going to be feasible. So we actually just parted ways with them. Since then, we've had, you know, a couple employees come and go, but nobody left like day of merger we're out of here, this place is terrible, or if it's not this company. We're able to keep every single key employee. They're still here. They've actually been promoted since they've been here and gotten raises. They've been able to flourish in a different environment that they were in. And again, all the people bought in. Like, a lot of times some of these owners think that, oh, nobody wants change, they hate it. Well, one of the biggest things we had is they used to do paper checks. And owner told me there's no way in hell they're going to go to direct deposit. And so we told them, like, day one, hey, paper checks is not even an option. We're doing direct deposit. And everybody's like, oh, that's awesome. So change can be good. And so we've been able to retain all our people pretty much that came over through the merger. And we're up to 72 employees now.
That's insane, man.
So that was a great story.
How did your so we were talking about this before you came on, and you've even mentioned it in your story so far. How did that look like with your trucking company? You're over here and you're servicing all of these site development companies. That's your customer, and then you become that competition, and your trucking company's over here, you know, probably getting some kickback because now the same owner's got both.
Yeah,
he's dipping in both pots.
That's something that when we wrote out this business plan with Scott, from day one, we knew we were going to have a loss of revenue in the trucking side. So I underwrote the deal knowing, okay, if I take this company, my customers now are going to look at us as competition. They're probably not going to want to work with us, right? Because we're going to go head to head with them on bids. We're going to go head to head with them on employees. Sure, there's going to be people that leave them to come work for us. So we underwrote as our growth cycle. As the site development company grew, we knew our trucking division was going to take a little bit of a loss until it caught back up, and we focused on a different clientele. So we underwrote the business plan that way, right? You have to sometimes take a bird's eye view of what's going to happen, or where you're going, and seeing what could be the ramifications. So we underwrote it, that we knew that our business was going to decline. So we knew we had to push harder in the site development side to compensate for that, because 72 employees is a very, very heavy payroll. We, on average, our payroll is anywhere between 98,000 or 100,000 a week. Yeah. Our subcontractor payroll and vendors, we're paying out every bit of 300 grand a week. So on average, we're at 400 to 500,000 a week that we're paying out weekly, but we don't get paid on average until 60 days, right? So we had to plan out strategically what income still needed to come through the door as we went from half a pay. You know, our payroll went from 42,000 to 98,000 literally overnight. What did we need to make sure we still were generating to balance that, to keep it going? Because the way that I looked at buying this business was nothing different than buying real estate. I bought a distressed asset that was going to take a large cash infusion to keep them going afloat, because they didn't have a lot of backlog. And then, you know, where is it going to get us, and how long do I have to keep investing cash? So that was how I planned it. And I think it's actually gone pretty much. We've actually been able to still work alongside our competitors because they know what I'm trying to accomplish, and we just have open communication. Like, hey, if you still need to move your dirt, I still have that division that can service you and keep you and provide that service. Some of the guys, I've taken some of their employees, so they're not very happy with me and they want nothing to do with me. But, we are focusing on a different customer avatar in the trucking side now.
Yeah. So are you still brokering 100% on the trucking side, or do you have your own trucks?
No. So, early on into the trucking, I would say a year in, I started buying some trucks because, it's by the competition. I realized a lot of what they were saying is, oh, you just want to use this guy. He's just brokering. He doesn't have his own truck. So he's not going to be reliable. So that was one of the objections I was getting. So I said, okay, well, I'll buy some trucks and now I can be reliable. Right. And it's just a perception. You can still deliver a great quality with subs, but sometimes that was some of the objections. I run on average, like today we ran 70 something trucks. I got as high as running 230 trucks. And each one of those trucks do about $900 a day. So you think about that revenue times 5, but I also pay weekly. I don't get paid in 30 days. So that was a crazy cash flow struggle. You generated a lot of revenue, but was also very crazy. So we run about 70 trucks and we only own 10, we own 12. 2 of them are spares and we run 10. So I don't want to own more than 10 trucks. Our trucks are there to be kind of a guide to the brokers, hold them accountable. And then I still broker a very large percentage of the trucking.
Wow. So how do you handle this cash flow issue? Do you have just a nice size reserve? Do you have lines of credit? Do you do factoring? What are some of the strategies you have to make sure that you make payroll and you keep cash flow flowing?
Look, one thing you guys would get from me is that I'm real, and it's a bitch, man. It is a bitch, and it is stressful. My reserve is our line of credit, right?
Yeah.
I tried to have a reserve, but if I have $500,000 saved aside, something pops up where, we just picked up this job and we got to order all material, and it is a never-ending cycle that I'm learning through. So I can't tell you guys that I have the cash flow management 100% figured out and what's the best way. But my biggest thing is just staying on top of it every single deadline minute. But yeah, if I didn't have my line of credit, I probably, and you would figure it out, but I probably could not sustain doing what I'm doing because I pulled on that line of credit to help me stabilize Richmark. And then from time to time, I pull on it to make sure our vendors are paid. One of my biggest things, I had a conversation with a sub that owes us some money, and it's not my sub's problem if I can't pay them. I mean, it's not my sub's problems if I haven't gotten paid from the owner, should I say, right? I'm doing a deal with you and me. My problems, it's my job to go get the money, right? So I always honor my subs. I always honor my timelines that I do. And that's in this trade-based business. That's what you're about. If your word's not worth anything, people don't give a shit to work about you. Yes, I still protect my bases by doing written contracts. All of those things are still massively important when you scale and grow, but people still want to know that your word is worth something in this business. So I still maintain my relationship with my subs, but it's my job to go out and chase. And the biggest thing is just having the right protocols to make sure you're billing on time. One of the things that has killed us in the past, missed billings. And in the contract world, if you miss a billing, if you miss a certain date, you can't bill till next month. I mean, that is life and death sometimes. So making sure your team has, for the size I'm in, it was a big change for me night and day where March of last year at 35 employees, I was in every facet of my business. I mean, every facet, I knew what was going on. And then going from 35 to 60 overnight, it's different. You have to be able to rely on people and you have to be able to trust. But if you can trust, but you don't have a process, you might not get the result that you thought you needed to get.
Trust but verify.
Yeah. And the trust and verify is a thing, but also you have to deliver your people a process because we think, like, in our mind as business owners, you're like, that's easy. Like, that's a no-brainer. Like, you can knock this out. You just do this, 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 and this. But you have somebody that's in a seat that just has never had to do that or has never had the intensity of needing to do that. So they do it differently, and then your expectation is lost and something goes down the wayside. So one of the biggest things, we're trying to implement a process for everything. And sometimes it's hard for smaller business owners because you feel like you're going corporate. Well, look, I hate to tell you, there's a reason why corporations can scale and grow. You need to have that home feel, but the structure and accountability is where I'm lacking now. But process is what's helped us a lot. But to the cash management, man, look, I don't have it figured out. It's a never ending cycle. There's weeks that we have 2 million in the bank account and there's weeks that we have 30,000, and I am like pushing and trying to figure it out. So it's ebbs and flows to making sure you have the right thing. But the biggest key is setting up longer payment terms with your vendors and setting up incentives with your customers to pay you earlier. That's good. It's a simple thing that it should be simple, but what is that? Like, are you sitting in a meeting with your team and saying, hey, how are we incentivizing our customers to pay us early? And how are we incentivizing our vendors to let us pay later? Like, we have to have those conversations.
That's
Ivo, I think you could probably factor. And that's something I did I had cash flow issues, and it was always in the back of my mind. It slows your growth down without even you knowing it, because you know that you just don't want more heat. We have a friend, he spoke at our event, John Federa. He's great with that. If you want, after this, I'll do a group
sure.
text and see if he can help you out. He's been
Yeah,
great for me.
absolutely. And when I've looked at factoring, and factoring is a good option. It's, until the point we're now at a 2.5 million line of credit that just got reextended at 6.5%, right? So I can pull on the line if I need it at 6.5%, where versus factoring, sometimes they're 1.5% a month, almost 2%.
Yeah.
So I have the cash there. So that's why sometimes too, if you can, even my banker told me one thing that I'll take home: you always ask for money when you don't need it. So, I started this line of credit that I never thought I needed. But same goes to you. I probably should have factoring in my back pocket in case that line of credit drops out. So I'd love to be connected.
And you know what you can do with factoring? You don't have to factor everything. So I only factor a percentage of them, because I have cash sitting, and because I'll say, well, I'll just save the money. So you don't have to just say, oh, I'm going to do this on everything.
Yeah.
You just say, let me just do this for 5 clients, and I know I have easy cash flow. But
that's
something to look into.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that.
What does your management team look like now? I mean, it's pretty incredible that you have jumped in zeros as fast as you have. And that was one of the hardest things for me when I went from technician into the van into business owner, managing people, identifying getting clarity on what those processes are, what their KPIs should be, setting up accountability partners to make sure. I mean, me and Christy were in the conference room yesterday just going over our financial side of the business and some of those processes so that we can do some things different in that area. So at this size, and maybe even bring us back to where you started hiring in management, what does your leadership team look like now?
Absolutely. So what our leadership team looks like now, you have Taylor and I at the top as CEO founders. And then Taylor actually moves down to, right now, she's kind of like our interim COO, because she's got her shit together and I don't. So she runs the whole ordeal. And then underneath her, I have 3 departments. I have director of construction, I have director of trucking, controller, and accountant. And those 3 or those 4 people report directly to us. Yeah. Right. And then underneath the director of trucking, you have the project managers and estimators, you have the field general superintendents, and then underneath each of those positions, you have, in the estimators, you have your junior estimators and estimators. In your field general superintendent, you have your foremans, laborers, operators. And then for trucking, you have your 2 sales guys. You got the director, the 2 sales guys, and then they're the truck runners and drivers. And then under accounting, you have the controller. And I did it a little bit separate where, I have one of our key employees that has been with me from day one. She went from being a $12 an hour employee to running pretty much everything in the company. She's been here for 4 years. And she is running all the back office, a lot of the accounting. She's getting everything. So I didn't want her to feel like she's been here forever and she always gets somebody replaced above her. So I put her alongside the leadership group where her technical skills are not there yet, but her commitment is 100% there. So I put her there to work alongside. She technically reports to the controller. And then the controller has 2 accountants underneath him. And we just, one of the things I was talking today, I'm not doing a great job of doing consistent meetings every week. We do it every 2 week. But I have the team report together every 2 weeks about just KPIs, where we're heading, where we're towards. And then once a month, I do a full breakdown. I'm very transparent. I let all my key personnel see my P&L, income, balance sheet, debt, bank statement. I want them to be, if we're a startup and it's a grind and it's a push for everybody, I want everybody to know where we stand, right? I have no fear for key personnel to share where we're at every day, every week. So we then do once a month, hey, what are we doing good at? What are we sucking at? What do our people say? Are there major issues we got to tackle? And I try to let the core team work together on problems. And then I try to meet with them every 2 weeks, like one-on-one. Like I had coffee with my controller today, and I try to do like my one-on-ones. I'm trying to get away with doing it out of the office. I want people to be able to feel vulnerable and have like legit conversations with me. Like, if they're frustrated, if they're upset, if they're stressed, or if they're awesome, or if they have something personally going on at home that's going to ultimately affect their work life, I want to know about it.
Right.
At the end of the day, we're always just solving problems, right? We have to, as much as we don't think that we should solve our key employees' problems, we need to be there alongside them so they feel valued. So that's what our leadership looks like.
What do you think the hardest part of running your company is?
Cash flow is a bitch. I will tell you that part of it is difficult, but it ties back to people. It's a bitch because I don't have the exact 100% processes that people can follow.
Yeah.
But also what's difficult in small companies is that I was having this conversation with my controller. He came in from a larger organization. So he was this like CFO manager of about 80 accountants for the county. So he worked at a county and he managed the budget of about 90 million. So he has the level of getting there, but the difference of what it takes for small businesses to, we're talking about when we're talking about collections or we're talking about doing something, you have to be different until you get to the point, right? So there might be a process that we put in place that you could follow to give predictable results. But if you're not getting that results, you have to have the team and you have to mentor your team. That's where I lack is sometimes I think that all of us, we have this expectations that our employees should just think like we do. Well, they're not going to. It's not theirs. They've never had to do it. And sometimes I always talk about the lobster analogy. Like we all have a certain stress and anxiety that we carry because it's ours and we feel it. And so it causes us to think differently and just, you have to resolve. You have to fix it, right? You have to think. So teaching your team in a startup to think differently. There's stuff that would not make sense. Like I told my controller today and I said, look, if this customer is not willing to pay, did you ask him if he has a truck that we'll take as payment? Or did you ask him? I mean, that's when you're getting right to the very end. Sure. Or did you ask him if he has a crew that he can do work for us and we can deduct? Like somehow we have to get that money. Or maybe this guy, I went to his office, he has a whole company, right? So he's paying for fuel. He's doing his pay. He has money, just maybe not to allocate and pay his vendors. So did you ask him if he has a fuel account somewhere that we can fuel up $10,000 worth of fuel? So like, there's always an answer, but training your team to think outside the box can be difficult, but it starts with you mentoring and coaching them and not just expecting them to know. So I think that's the balance between needing to collect money to make sure you have enough money to pay the people, going and getting consistent work where you're billing and generating revenue, right? But also setting enough time to train your people to execute on those things. And it's always a chicken and the egg. You're like, well, if I just focus on making money, well, everything else will be covered. But then you're not setting, you're going to consistently be stressed because you're not spending time in the foundation of your business. So the hard part is finding that balance, but it is important that you set, like, it's just a non-negotiable. If Fridays or Thursdays, you're just working in the foundation stuff, working in processes, and that's all you do, you have to do it. As much as, okay, you might have lost this work or this lead might fall through a crack. If you're trying to scale, you have to spend some of your time there. I'm terrible at it, but I have the vision of how it should flow. So I partner up with Taylor. My controller is also a very process-driven person. So I just brain dump how I think it should be. And I just walk out of the room and you guys say, you guys figure it out, write a process. But no, so that is the struggle of maintaining those balances because and you get to a certain size, payroll is a very stressful thing. Yeah. So you have to make sure you have enough revenue, but it's also so important to work on the foundational things of your business. So finding that balance is probably one of the harder things when you get to my size.
Ivo, how long have you been doing this now from when you Googled how to move dirt?
From when I Googled in 2016. So
that's incredible.
We are going on year 8? So yeah, it's been a journey, man.
If you had your 2023 version had said while you were Googling, hold on, in 8 years, you're going to be paying out $400,000 a week to employees and subs. I mean, it's insane.
Crazy.
But like, that's why, like, as an entrepreneur, you're learning so fast. In 1 year, it's like 20 years for other people.
Absolutely.
When people say, I have 20 years of experience in insurance. I always think you have 1 year repeated 20 times.
Yeah,
But Ivo has 8 years, but it's like insane amounts. It's a career.
absolutely.
But what's
You've already done a
amazing
career.
is you kept building on top of skill set after skill set after
Yeah.
skill set. And then you were also leveraging other people's experience. Is Scott still, how often do you meet with Scott?
I call him every day. I call him. He is my mentor, a partner, and a friend. But we have Scott on retainer, and we're actually jumping on and partnering up with Scott on something to help businesses scale and grow. I am like Scott's biggest advocate, because without him, I couldn't have done what I've done. And so, yeah, I mean, I meet with Scott every day. I mean, like I said, I called him yesterday. I had an issue with an employee. I said, did I manage this right? And I realized that there was some leadership flaws in my end that I didn't hold my team accountable. But yeah, I think I meet with Scott. You need to have somebody that's been there and done that, or somebody that's 10 times higher than you. And I mean, and what I'll say is, man, like, I'm just stupid enough to try, and then I'm dedicated enough to put the work in. So you have to be ignorant to just say, fuck it. Like, we're going to do this, but then you just have to just follow it up with the work. Just fucking, I mean, the number one thing you walk in, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to be dropping.
No, you're good. This is blue collar, man.
Yeah. But the number one thing that people walk in my office is outwork everybody. That's my secret sauce, because, I have a little running joke with Taylor where, I wake up early. I'm a 5 o'clock, 4:30 kind of guy, and I work till freaking 10:30, 11, right? But I just tell her, she's like, well, some of these Bill Gates and Elon Musk, I've read that they wake up at 8:30 and 9. And I tell her, I said, listen, your boy is dumb as hell. I'll tell her, I said, look, I don't have the IQ and GQ or whatever you want to call it as Elon and Steve. So whatever they do in 4 hours is probably going to take me 10, but I promise you, I will work the 10 or 11. So, we just have to be, I don't think this stuff that we're doing is hard. You have to be intentional and a little bit crazy to just do it. Like, don't look, maybe I'm fucking nuts and all of this doesn't work, but I tried it. And you know what? I'll go do it again some other different way and learn. I mean, obviously we have to take the learning lessons that we've taken, not just keep doing the same mistakes. But Kevin, I think to answer what you said, hell no. If you would have told me, I was just saying, like, I thought if I could just make $1 million, like, it's a done deal. But to say what, what's allowed me to grow is never becoming complacent. And you're going to find, I think all of us find that in some sort of level of success comes complacency. It just happens. You set this goal, you reach it, and you're like, I'm the shit. Like, I did it. And then you're like, you might coast for a little bit. But finding people, hanging out, I got to hang out with Chris a couple weeks ago in a pool, and like, we're pushing and pulling for each other. I've hung out with Kevin, and we're talking about his gutter business and how do you find subs and how do you think better, and just the sheer will to want to succeed and getting excited from other people's wins will let you level up and think bigger. So
this interview got me pumped up. Chris, I'm sure it did. But here's the other part of that. When you were telling yourself, if you were to tell yourself you're going to be doing this much in payroll, but also now when you talk about doing 100 million a year and up, you believe it. We all believe it because you did all these steps. That's the key. With a lot of guys, they don't want to start and they don't want to be at that low level. They got to enjoy that journey and stack those wins, because all of a sudden you have 7-8 years of wins. And then it's like, you start to tell yourself, oh yeah, I'll do 100 million.
Absolutely.
It's going to happen. And then I love how you guys reverse engineered it. So many guys say, I'm going to buy this business and triple it. And I say, well, how? And they're like, yeah, I'll get it up to 10 million. How? You got to make a plan. And then, is this realistic? What are all the actions you have to take to do it? So that's bringing Scott in and doing that. I'm sure you put it. And then one day you were like, yeah, I'm going to do that.
Absolutely. And if you guys, if anybody wants, I can send it to Chris. I have no problem. I'll share the spreadsheet that I created. And in that spreadsheet, it has everything. You talk about, who's your, at 10 million, who's your perfect avatar? What are the key employees? Like, so in that exercise, who are the employees you need to hire? And then Scott would go, do you have anybody in mind that in 2 years you'd reach out to him? I put those names in there. And so there's that. And then what kind of work do you want to do in that time, right? If it's there and you can put your energy, sometimes we say, yeah, I want to do 10 million. And you're like, us as entrepreneurs, you don't know where to start. And you, like we talked about in the beginning of this event, is like, sometimes you work all day and you're like, yeah, I was so busy, but you got nothing done. And you think about Elon, Steve Jobs, those guys have the same day you do. They're just so intentional with everything they do. Right. And so that's one of the great thing is, I would love, I could show you guys the spreadsheet.
That'd be great if you feel comfortable doing that.
Absolutely. I mean, like, I'm an open book. I think if what gets put in the world, and if I can help somebody, then all for it. And it's pretty straightforward. It's just an Excel spreadsheet that just had my 1 through 5 years. So I'll share that.
I loved your answer to when Scott was like, do you want to put that out there, competitors can see that? You weren't worried about that. You have an abundance mindset. I would be thinking like Scott too, but then part of me would be thinking like you. So there's a balance, but you were going to do it regardless.
Yeah. And I mean, it might be a little stupid. Like I said, it might be a little bit of ignorance. I just had one of my key employees that I offered ownership to. I offered everything. And, he went and started his own thing, which is necessarily not the problem, but he just stole all our company information and all backlog stuff. And so I'm not necessarily so upset about that, because I think there's, I'm going to deliver a certain value that he can't. But it's so important that you protect yourself in business. You can't be ignorant, as much as I say, I'm going to put it out there, learning lessons. There's things that I knew, but I trusted this person so much. In business, I think you have to have a certain, as much as you love, trust, it's family, just set a protocol. And that's a protocol for everybody. Biggest learning lesson that I'm experiencing today in my business is that what you do for one, you have to do for all. And that's how you scale a business. And that's how you don't keep like the favoritism or the, oh, that's funny, or oh, that's hard to do. Like if you just, you hire a friend and you say, hey man, look, you have to have a company phone, you have to report to me, and you have to do this, because that's what everybody does. Then there's none of that weird feeling. Or if you make somebody sign a non-compete, make everybody sign a non-compete. Like whatever you're going to do for one, do for all, and don't make exceptions to the rules, because it will bite you in the ass.
All right. I told you guys that he doesn't meet a stranger. And when you get done talking with him, you walk away feeling like a friend. So, and it's because you're so transparent. And I think that's really the reason that your business has grown so much, is because you take such a humble state. I mean, you're constantly asking, how do you do this? What do you do this? How, what's going to allow you to, or me to achieve this? You are so great at asking questions, because you really do set your ego aside, and you've got plenty of room to have major ego. So, absolutely. Dude, I appreciate the value that you brought. I know we've got a ton of comments over here. Send me that spreadsheet. And what I'll do is I'll post it in its own section in the news feed for people to be able to take a look.
I think, Ivo, you answered my question, because when I heard you were coming on, and I don't know why, like maybe 5 months ago, one day I said, what happened to Ivo? I never see him on Facebook anymore, because I liked when you were doing the lives with Scott and I was watching them. And now I know you're building a fucking dynasty over here. I don't have time to be on social media.
So, well, I want to answer that too, because this is going to be the catapult of me getting back on social media. Sometimes it's important not to share early, right? There's a lot that gets done today that's just rah, I've done this. But I also left some market share from not being in social media. So, I think there's two things that, to make a statement why I've been silent. Sometimes there are phases in life that you have to know where you're in. And in that time, I went out, I got a lot of attention. I was in it all the time. And that actually had a direct relation in some of my personal life as well. So one of the biggest things that I've learned is that nothing is perfect and nothing has to be dictated by anybody else. So I think it's extremely important that, yes, I should have probably been posting more consecutively, and I should have done this and I could have done that. But I chose that in this phase of the past 2 years of my life, it was more important to just zero in And you have to know that I knew I lost market share. I probably could have had more businesses, more leads, more followers, but nobody gets to, you design the life. And that's why I'm in business, is because I want to design the life I want to live. So if I don't want to post for 2 years, I didn't, but it is important that you do though. I hindsight should have still just kept through, just, hey, update. This is what we did today. This is where we're at. But to make a radical impact, I think you can shut yourself down, put your head down and focus on one thing. Sometimes if we focus on too much, you can deliver a shit product. And that's what I didn't want to do. And that's where I've been at. I've just had my head down, trying to build this thing, trying to put it together. But I have been documenting privately, when we bought the company, I have the video from like, how did I feel in that moment? And what was it like buying a company? And I've been doing interviews with employees. So it sometimes can be damaging to share too early. And that's why I've been a little on the low key, but I think this might be my comeback move.
I hope so, man.
Answer. Yeah, you have so much to give. This interview was awesome.
All right. Well, what's your ask? What's your ask to our audience? It sounded like you're about to do some kind of coaching group. So if that's the ask, then let's.
Yeah, I mean, no, I think the ask is my goal is, my dad did this big risk of coming to a new country and giving me the opportunity to grow. And, he left everything behind. So I'm indebted to some of that. And, I want to keep his legacy of giving and continue. So my ask is, if you guys have anything you need, or any questions or any connections I can make, my ask is to give. My ask is, reach out to me, let me know how I can help. And then I'd love to have some of you guys follow me on Facebook, Instagram. On Instagram, I'm at the Brazilian Entrepreneur. Facebook, it's Ivo Pereira, and I'll send it to you, Chris and Kevin, so you guys can share it. And then you guys are gonna be hearing from Scott and I. We have a business event along with business structure to help businesses scale and grow. We're going to be partnering up with businesses if that's something that businesses want to do, and acquiring businesses. So go ahead.
When are you going to do that? I want to go to that. I would like.
So I don't know if I'm allowed to share, but it is going to be an October timeline. And so just stay tuned. We're finalizing all the details and getting everything kind of put in place. And then we're going to work in the back end to create the different products and different structures of how we can help businesses grow and scale. Again, I don't have it all figured out. I don't know everything, but I think we can add some value back into some businesses. So yeah, I'd love for you guys to follow me, and I'd love to connect. That'd be my ask. And then stay in touch if anybody wants to do anything in the business scaling and foundations.
And Ivo, when you're going to do that event, reach out to us, and we'll put a post up here in the thing, and we'll link your interview and Scott. Scott was on our show also. He had another awesome interview. Because I know you guys are going to put a killer event on, and I'll go to the event myself.
I will too.
Yeah, we'll go. Awesome. So anybody go, you're going to see everybody there.
Awesome. Well, I love that. Well, as soon as we get it all dialed in, we will get it to you guys.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for coming on.
Guys, thank you so much for having me.
Right.
You guys have a good rest of your day. It was a blast.